Hi, good morning. My name's Chelsea Laddish, and this is Dotty Delightful Creative Circle Takeover, which is kind of a mouthful, but there we go, I said it. I'm stoked already. By trade, I am a tattoo artist. I've been tattooing for the past 11 years. In my spare time, though, and anytime I can really, I like to paint people. I love to paint portraits. I work in watercolour and fine liner pens, and I do a different selection of styles as well. I like to do anything from caricature styles through to the more detailed, realistic kind of side of things, which, to be honest, most of the time I sit kind of comfortably right in the middle of those two extremes. So not super cartoony, but also not super realistic. It's just kind of stylized and what I find the most enjoyment from doing. I will show you some examples, but what I would really love to do today is encourage everyone as a challenge, I suppose it's a challenge, to do a self-portrait. It can be any medium that you prefer. If you don't have watercolour paints, please don't freak out or don't worry. You can use whatever you have to hand, even if it's a pencil, just a pencil sketch, or acrylics, or if your kids have some pencil crayons or felt tips, just go wild with whatever you have, because what I'm actually going to do today is pushing myself out of my comfort zone a lot as well, because I generally spend quite a few hours doing the portraits, and I'm going to do this a lot quicker today. So if it kind of turns out that the result is a piece of crap, then I'm really sorry, but I'm just gonna experiment and have fun with it. And because it's not always about the end result, right? It's about the process and enjoying it. So that's my attitude today. I'm just gonna let it go and have some fun, and that might reflect in the results. So I'm just giving you a heads up. I encourage you to do the same thing. Don't overthink it, just go for it. You don't have to look. If you want to look in a mirror, that's great. If you don't want to do it from a mirror and you just want to draw yourself from your own memory, go for it. Anything's fine. This isn't a live video, and I can only apologise for that. That would have been my preference, because it would have been nice to have the interaction with the comments, but because of the way that I paint and I have to wait for layers to dry in between, you just would have been sat watching paint dry, which is really dull, and I wouldn't want to bore you like that. So I've edited this video, and that's why I've pre-recorded, so that you don't have to sit and watch the drying times. But this does mean if you have any questions about what I do, things I like to use when I'm painting, music, things like any kind of questions like music taste, other kinds of art, I'd be happy to talk about any number of things with you, because I really like this group. It's a special group. I really enjoy seeing what you guys post, and it would be really great to have this platform to build more communication and more conversations with you. So please feel free to ask any questions underneath in the comments of this video. Also, when you've done your self-portrait later today, throughout the day, you can just upload it as a comment onto this thread. We can all have a look later on today. I'll come back on again at about 6:30 this evening, and we can reconvene and check out what everyone's been doing throughout the day. I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you very much for being here if you're watching this, and I look forward to speaking to you later on. Just to give you some context, this is where I work. This is actually my bedroom. I have an attic bedroom, so I get some really nice natural light here. I have a 6-year-old son called Rook as well, so he has his little desk next to mine, and it's pretty cute because he likes to draw and paint as well, and it's a nice way to spend time with him. So yeah, this is where I do most of my work. Okay, so here I just have a few examples of some of the portraits I've done. They've taken me anything from half an hour to, probably say a couple of these took 2.5 hours. They're only small. So this is one that I did of my mum. This was a pretty quick one, just caricature. Again, slightly more time, just because there's slightly more detail, and if you can see the difference, a couple more layers of paint on the face. The one I'm doing today with you guys, I've probably a tiny bit more layered than this, but not much. So really, I start with the lighter colours and I layer over the top with the darker colours. So this is an example of not many layers. You still have a nice finish and definition because of the pens, but there's not a super amount of layers with the paint. And the more time you spend, so I can go anything up to sort of 20-30 layers depending on the painting. If it's a more realistic thing, they really have a lot more layers and they take a lot more time. But just on what we're doing today, I've just concentrated on something a lot more simple, just to make it more accessible for everyone and people that maybe haven't tried doing this before, and also because it's really fun to just do something like this, and it's not as time consuming. Again, so slightly more layers, more detail. This one I've gone with more detail with the pen, if you see the difference. Even just drawing over the top of what you've painted, you can really add depth just by adding more of the cross-hatching and texture with the fine liners. I personally prefer to use these smaller pieces, so I cut these out of a larger pad. And this is hot pressed watercolour paper. It's pretty high quality, it's kind of thick, but I like the hot press because it's a smoother surface. The kind of pens that I use on something that's not a commission specifically, I like to use Sharpie just for the black areas. I wouldn't recommend using Sharpie over large areas to fill in the black. I used to do this myself, but over a period of time it can actually lighten and you can see the pen marks more over a period of time and it fades. So I would recommend using Indian ink for larger pieces or commissions, but I'm going to use this today. I also really like these Unipin fine liners. Because I like to draw kind of small, I tend to use the thinner nibs, so anything from 0.05, 0.1 and 0.3. These are the ones that I tend to use when doing the portraits that I do. I like to use mechanical pencils because you always get that nice fine tip on the end, but any kind of pencil is great to start just to map out sort of the proportions and the sizings and your layout before you start committing to the pens. Some people go straight to pen and I really admire that and I wish I could do that, but I like to have a map to work around with pencil first. I'm going to do this without a reference here, so you just kind of want to do a roundish shape. This is just where the general face area is going to be. Bit of a neck, bit of a collar line. So this is quite light, but it's just to map out where everything's going. A good thing to do is to actually draw structural lines onto the face, which you can later rub out, so to show where the eyes, the nose, and the mouth are going to go. I've got a pretty heavy fringe. Again, I'm just kind of mapping out where this is going to go. And my hair is just kind of like I've stuck my finger in a socket, I guess. That's the style I'm going for. So just put some light references in for hair. So this will give you a good map for putting in the actual features. It's all about just building up smaller details. You can be really rough with this because when you go in with the pen, that's when you can put a few more details in. Okay, so onto the features. You can just put little sort of light ovals in here just to give you a bit of shape to work on with the pen. Again, this is just to kind of get it proportionately correct. I like to do a little smile kind of shape here for the nose, just the hint of the nostrils initially. And then I'm going to give myself a little smile here. Now, I'm not taking too much time to be super accurate with this. It's just meant to be a bit of fun and just to practice having a bit of confidence in being more free with your movements and just kind of going for it instead of agonizing over every tiny detail, which is, I'm definitely guilty of doing that, but yeah, just trying to be a bit more wild and free with this one. Okay, so when you're happy with the pencil rough sketch that you have, come up here, then we can move to the pen. So I always start with the thinner of the pens, so I would use my 0.05 for this next stage, and then I kind of build up the thickness as I go on and add the details. So what you might want to do is just maybe start with the eyes, pick a feature to start with. I'm going to start with the eyes, so you literally just putting in your details. When you do the underneath of the eye, it can look better if you don't put a thick line in like this, even with the thinner pen. So if you use your pencil line just to sort of show where some eyelashes would be and just dot it a bit initially like this, it just doesn't give it that really boxy, heavy outline around the eye. Makes it look a little bit more natural. I always find it looks better as well if you add the sort of lid of the eye. This extra line just gives it a little bit more detail. So again, I'm just using this pen to add really simple, just building on the base that we have with the pencil. I haven't done anything this quick for quite a while, so it'll be interesting to see if this actually looks like me. This is just the way I do it. I know some people go straight in with a thicker pen, and that works great for some people, but this is just what I'm more confident with because it allows me to sort of go back and change things a little bit as I go along. Just kind of giving a bit of texture. You can be as crazy as you want with and as loose as you want. So now I've got to this stage, I would actually rub out my sketch pencil lines just to give me a bit more clarity with what I'm doing. I really like the Winsor & Newton watercolour paints, so this is what I use. It's kind of really messy right now. I do clean this out and wipe this down from time to time, but I'm a messy painter, so this is just kind of how my stuff looks. So I'm going to put this out here, get myself some water. I just got given this. I don't even know if it's specifically for watercolours, but I just really like it. So I like to use a bit of red and a bit of a darker tone of browny red as well. And then you just water it out and you get this really nice kind of, it's this kind of tone here that really makes it more fleshy, in my opinion. So I like to add quite a lot of water. The first thing I would do is literally just paint a really light base tone, a fleshy tone over the whole of the skin area. So it's basically going over everything apart from the eyes. You can be quite rough with this because there are going to be layers that go over the top. So you're not going to see too much. With the larger sort of areas, like this face being probably the largest area, if I'm doing a block area in one colour, the quicker you go, the better, just because then you don't get the sort of brush strokes as it's drying as you're painting. You can make those work in your favour, so for example it's still kind of drying, but if you want to if you know that you're going to have some shadow around certain areas, you can always add some as you're going along before it dries. I would say lips, cheeks, the tip of the nose here and just above the eyes and the sides of the face are the best places to go, and just here on the chin, on the actual face, just to put a slightly darker tone as you're building. So you have your very light base, and then I'm just building it up in certain areas. And this dries pretty quick because it's kind of warm in here today, so I'm gonna, whilst it's drying, just put some really light tones in for the eyes here. And again, you might think, why am I not putting the pupils in? Why am I not doing the eyelashes? Things like that. I like to get my rough sketch with a thin pen, put some of the paints on, and then actually start adding the pen over the top of the paint. My hair is pretty orange, I guess, so I'm just gonna go not super natural here. So use my oranges here and add a tiny bit of darker tone. Because it's a big area, just kind of go really quick. You can be kind of messy with this. So again, if I was doing a commission, I wouldn't use Sharpie for this because it can fade a lot over time, and this is quite a big area. But for this kind of thing, I'm just going to use Sharpie. So just real quick there. That's my top. Where I did the darker features earlier with the reds, I'm just going to add to this cheek area here. You can be real quick, just under the nose, side of the nose here. There are just key places that you always have that kind of bridge, that shadow in between the eyes there on the nose. Side of the faces, lips, chin, just under the chin here to show some depth. So I'm going to go really orange on my hair. And it's really good to use the edge of the brush as well, because you can get some good texture for the hair and stuff. I really enjoy using different parts. Don't be afraid to use different parts of the paintbrush because they can really bring in different textures. But having that just base underneath, the lighter base, just gives you a bit of depth, which even with just the two colours here on the hair, it really just can show the highlights and things, to have that colour underneath that's not just the plain white. This is the middle stage, I guess, and then I'm going to let this dry and then we'll come back to it and put some more pen over the top. This is when I would go in with the thicker pens. I used, as you remember, the 0.05 just to get the base down. I might use this again for finer details like eyelashes and things like that, but now I will go on to the thicker pen, which is the 0.3, just to give a bit more definition around the edges. I would use the thicker lines for around the edge of the face and sort of the outlines of everything, so the edge of the neck, the middle line, perhaps just the middle line initially of the mouth. And my hair is kind of crazy, so I'm just gonna do some texture lines like this. Doing some directional lines for the hair. And now going back to a thinner pen, so either the 0.05 or the 0.1. I like to use a lot of cross-hatching and stuff with my drawings that are more sort of cartoony, and it's a really good way of just adding shadow in quite a simple way. So for example, if there would be shadow here on the side of the neck, all you're doing is you're bringing straight lines down and then to crosshatch you just go straight across the other way, and it just gives the illusion of shadow and depth. You can make it slightly thicker there under the chin, just to show shadow. So again, just bringing these sort of lines across and then using the lines as shadow. So we might have here, just under the cheeks, a few bits of shadow here. Generally there would be a bit of shadow. So just imagining your face, or if you're looking in a mirror, just where there's a bit more shadow, using the thinner pen, just bring some lines through, and it just allows you to sort of build up a bit more shadow. Sometimes it's nice to add a little bit of extra detail in the eyes, just because that's what you tend to look at when you look at a picture of a person. So again, using the cross hatching just to build up some shadow here, just getting thicker under the actual top lash line. A trick with eyelashes as well, a lot of people just tend to draw lines straight out. If you want to give it a slightly more natural look, starting from the center of the pupil here, if you flick the eyelashes out like this, when you get to the pupil you can actually go up, and then if you bring a couple across this way, it just gives it a slightly more natural look. So inwards from the middle of the pupil, and then flicking back out this way. I wish my eyelashes were this long. They're not this long. I look kind of strange on this picture because I have no eyebrows, so I'm just going to go back to this thick pen here and give myself some... I have kind of Madonna thick black eyebrows, so... And again, you can sort of, if you do this way first, and then if you cut across, just with the double hatching, it gives it a bit more thickness. One thing I forgot, if you want to shade from the side of the lips here, it can actually make the lips look a bit more defined. So where the lips would end, you're just sort of flicking it out, feathering it out, and again on the bottom lip, just feather it out like this. And again this side, just feathering it out. Doesn't have to be super neat. And it just gives the lips a bit more depth. If you feel that some of the colours that you've used, because obviously when watercolours dry, they dry a bit lighter a lot of the time. So I'm just going to go in here and add just a tiny bit again on a few key areas of the face. So that would be the lips here, just a bit more colour, under the nose. And then I really want to just add, I really like having the rosy cheeks. I think it makes a huge difference. So you can just quickly put that on, then just dip the paintbrush in the water and just soften the edges like this. It's nice to have some of the textural lines that the paint leaves when it dries, but if you want to just soften the edges a bit, you can just go in with water just on the brush. So washing the paint off and then just going in like this and smoothing it off. Okay, so I'm just starting to add a tiny bit of white to this dried area now, so you can literally, and using the side of the brush, you can really just be kind of messy with it and then blend it in like this. Probably the most important parts of the face to put highlights are the end of the nose here. Just give a little bit of a shine on the nose. And I like to always put something here on the bottom lip. The main place that really the white comes in and makes a difference is the eyes. So I'm just putting a few highlights. This, it's picking out my greys here. There's got this grey patch here. I'm just gonna emphasize. But the main thing for the white is the actual eyes. So I'm just gonna put a couple of dots in here. It just really makes them pop more. And there you go. A quick caricature with pens and watercolour. Always sign your artwork.